Before I get into mine, I just want to follow up on a couple points that Philip made. In the history of community health centers, Bonnie Lefkowitz, who is a long-term person involved with the health center movement, did write a book on the history of community health centers. And I'm not sure if it's available through NAC or not. I apologize, but I'm thinking I brought my copy with me. But it gives a lot of detail of the history, and it's a very good piece. And a couple things that really stood out when Philip was talking about the latest accomplishments of the health center movement. One of them was just a couple years ago when he mentioned the unanimous reauthorization of our program. The key word there being unanimous. You know, how many other bills that you know have went through Congress unanimously? You know, there's not that many, if any at all. And a lot of it is the effective advocacy done not only by NAC, Primary Care Association, but all of us sitting in this room, in which we'll talk a little bit more about advocacy as we go along. And then, so that's part of being, you know, effective, is doing what we're supposed to do as we go through this. But before we get more into this, I want to kind of get an idea when we talk about being effective is your board meetings. Okay, how many, just you know, kind of a show of hands, how many of your board meetings last over 2 hours? Okay, what about from an hour to 2 hours? How about less than an hour? My kind of view. Okay. When we talk about our board meetings, we look at how many are using a consent agenda. Okay, yeah, very good. That'll shorten up your board meetings right there by doing. If you're going to do a consent agenda, you have to have strong committees, which we'll talk a little bit about as well. But that would just kind of give us an idea of, you know, how can we be more effective? If we're up here 2 hours or more, how can we get down to less than an hour or an hour? And then, you know, a lot of it is what we're doing outside of the board meeting before we get to that point. The other thing I'd like to ask, how many have been involved with the health centers less than a year? A couple of new folks. Great. I'm glad you're here. How about from 1 to 5? Okay, how about over 5? Okay, that group, how many over 10? 15? How long have you been on?
Since 98.
Okay.
Since 14.
Long time, you know, with the rest of us. But again, it's carrying through. So one of the things that, you know, we want to talk about is using the experience that we have among the seasoned board members to help out the younger board members. Okay. Some of the responsibilities, we all know what we're supposed to do, but we want to make sure that we're fulfilling our mission. You know, first and foremost, whatever we do at that board table is mission focused. We want to make sure that we're following our bylaws. Hopefully everybody has read their bylaws and know what's in them. How's your center doing financially? We can't make effective decisions without finances to back up our actions. And then we're going to hire and evaluate our CEO, which we'll talk about tomorrow, but that is one of the requirements that we have to fulfill legally from the Bureau. And if we get all these pieces working together, we're going to have a smooth functioning board with a diverse background if we meet all our requirements. Okay. Now, sometimes we get into some discussions as we go through this, but we don't want to let that distract from what we're doing as a board and the work that has to be done for our community. Just some questions that we'll go through is, do you have a dream board, or is some of your actions of the board scary? I kind of found it unique as I was doing some research, pulling some information together. Is there signs of trouble before prices are up? Think about anything that's happened in your organization in the past. Was there some warning signs that could have alerted you ahead of time to this? Okay, again, ask your questions. Are we meeting our mission? You know, we're going to keep talking about that mission because it's so important. Because that's what the health center movement is all about, is the mission to provide quality care regardless of ability to pay. Are we working at the hardest on the most important task? I mean, we've got patients coming in the door, which in turn brings revenue in the door. But are we having everything follow proper sequence so we're getting the proper dollars coming through the door? Can we be more efficient? We can all do things that can improve our operation, either patient flow or whatever the case may be. And hopefully as everybody gets up and running on electronic health records and gets over the hump of the slowdown to get everybody accustomed, then we'll be able to be more effective. What's our long-range goals? Has the organization done some strategic planning and looked at our long-range goals? Again, these are going to help frame that work to be a dream operating board as time goes on. Are you following an agenda to make sure we don't waste time on unnecessary things? Are we staying on focus? Are we all in an agreement of what our planning process is, the tools that we're using? We're using consultants to bring them in to help establish our strategic plan. What kind of community involvement are we using? And we have all that coming together. And are we spending the proper amount of funds on the necessary things to prevent problems from happening and preparing to fulfill our goal and our mission? When we disagree between our board members or even our executive director, sometimes we all don't see eye to eye. But we have to understand each other's positions. We have to agree to disagree and leave the meeting as friends. When your board meeting is over, you've got some people that oppose a motion that was made. Is there the dissenting people, are they still supportive of the action of the total board? You know, we want to make sure that even though we disagree with it, we voice our opinion why, but we want to support the majority of the board when it comes to the public. We don't want to go out, well, I voted against that and because of this, but, they shouldn't be doing this. We want to support that decision. And we have to come out together in unison. Is the staff operating in a fear-free atmosphere? Is everybody always looking over their shoulder, well, am I going to get fired today? Or if I do this, am I going to get fired? Or is it going to be retaliated against? We have to make sure that we provide a comfortable atmosphere for our staff. We're not there as board members to micromanage. Last thing we want to do is be standing over the shoulder of our executive directors telling them what to do. We set that at the board meetings, tell them what they're going to do, and they report back to us. We're not in the center every day saying, did you get this done? Did you get this done? And I'm sure our directors in the room can appreciate not having that happen, because that's the last thing that needs to happen from our board standpoint. And we don't want that fear of punishment being out there. Well, are we going to do something that's really going to put their job in jeopardy or some matter? We want to make sure that the staff is fear-free and it's a relaxed atmosphere and a good place to work. We want to not only be the providers of quality care, but we want to be the employers of choice. And to do that, that trickles down from the board operating effective and efficiently as possible, all the way down through the janitor. The front desk people are so key, so I like to go down to both the janitor because sometimes they're behind the scenes. I mean, everybody in the organization has to feel that that is going well from the top down. When we fill our board member spots, are we doing an assessment of what kind of skill set we need on the board to make sure that we have the proper skills sitting at the table? The Bureau says we have to have diversity. That's one of the beauties of our community-based boards, is we bring backgrounds together and we all work as a team. We want to make sure that we're all looking at the objectives set forth to accomplish teamwork. I mean, we know what we have to do. We've got an agenda we're following. That's going to keep us on track. Decision is the mission. When we go, are we adding a site? Is that pursuant to our mission? Are we always constantly keeping that? And everybody's feeling free to discuss their opinions, but we don't have the bickering back and forth. It's calm discussion. I haven't seen it in health centers, thank God, but I have heard in other organizations where executive directors is the referee between a boxing match between board members. You know, that's not their job. And I, just hope that we never see that in our health centers. We've seen some heated discussions, but it could be civil and get to be done. Are you seeing things like this happen at your board meetings? Okay. If it is, start making corrections to it before it gets worse. And are we evaluating ourselves? Okay. Program expectations says the board will conduct an annual evaluation. Are we doing that, looking at, have we met our mission throughout the year and all our decisions and actions that we've taken? And any plans that we've done, any activities, does that follow our mission? Look at, make sure we're doing it in the right manner for the right reason. Are we bringing in outside expertise to educate not only the staff, but we as boards as well? You have somebody to come in and speak at your board meeting, whether it be somebody on finance to educate the boards, other than the CFO, sometimes a fresh set of eyes or something out there. We tend to look at somebody outside the organization as an expert more so than within. It's just human nature in any organization. But bring somebody in from the community, tell them what's happening out there. Work with your hospitals, bring those in. Educate yourself using the resources that we have available in the community so we as board members know what's happening out there. Okay. A couple of things that we can do to fulfill the gaps, right? If your board says, right, we're shy on the expertise we need, say, in marketing. Okay, we've got some open board spots in our board seats. Can we find somebody that has marketing background? Look at where were we at on a board level so we got all these disciplines together and be effective as we go through them. Okay, and then any other gaps that we need in any expertise or skill set that we as board members should have or have available to us at that table. Okay, how can we get that? Where can we find that? And then when you get into your committee assignments, we just went through this in our organization. And redo all the committee assignments. We brought in some new board members. So we went through and looked at the background of our board members. Do we have someone with a finance background sitting on quality improvement? Well, no, we want those on the finance committee. Make sure the skill sets match their activity within the board. And I've seen it time and time again. Well, yeah, I don't want to deal with that. I deal with that all day. I want to over here. Yeah, we need your expertise over here in this area because you can spot that quicker than we can. And make sure we're utilizing our people in the right manner so that we can be effective at that table. And again, if we're doing it effectively, we're going to shorten our board meeting time. Okay, again, what kind of dialogue are we having between our board members? If we don't have a lot of dialogue, let's encourage that. Let's get talking to one another, find out what their thoughts are on this issue. Is the board chair getting feedback from everybody to meet, or is it just one or two people talking? We've got anywhere from 9 to 25 people sitting at that table. Every one of them has something to offer, that's why they're there. So are we bringing in that dialogue from? Are we getting a good flow of information, not only amongst ourselves, but to and from the center? Or is the director getting any feedback properly to that, to carry out that work, and vice versa? Is there something going on that we're not getting timely? Are you getting your financial documents on a timely manner? Not 3 months behind, but are you looking at those on a monthly basis? We need to be looking at all that. Any other ideas that you can see that you can throw out there that might be a way to improve how effective the board is? You guys are too quiet. Ask more coffee. Susie.
Yeah, how many boards are now on the board option portal? So you use computers, not printed material.
All electronic?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, is anybody going to paperless under board packets? Other than Jackson? We're discussing it.
It's very interesting.
It's getting the technology out there
We waste more time on that.
Well, I think, and again, once you get through that transition,
It's
it's
just,
going to make you more effective.
it's just like the providers did when they went to EMR.
Exactly. You know, we've talked, had a discussion at our location about, as we're buying new hardware for EHR, I told them I want 15 iPads. And I said, I want them for every one of our board members. Because that would save the paper, it'd save the expense of the mailing. And I don't know about you, but you know, when you get a half-inch thick packet in the mail, and everybody would be responsible, you know, it's one of the things we're toying with. I'm trying. I'm lobbying for it. But I mean, it goes back to that. By using that, we can be more effective at our meetings. You know, the last thing you want to hear at a board meeting is somebody opening their packet for the first time.
Yeah.
And that's why it goes back to a little bit about the consent agendas. We only had a couple organizations using them. If you're going to do that type of agenda, you better know what's in that packet before you hit the door. It boils down to, I walk in, I just opened my packet, so, and we're going to approve all that in one fell swoop motion. Well, you better know what you're approving, otherwise you better be backing it out. I mean, so you're talking about effectiveness. In order to do that, to be real effective, your committees have to really be working overtime and be involved in their assignments. Are they meeting on a regular basis? There's that dialogue going back and forth. Are we getting the exchange of committee reports? Is your finance committee reporting out timely to the board? Your personnel or whatever the case may be. This time of year, we're all, you know, finalizing budgets and accounters for the following year. If you haven't done it, you know, you're right there. We should have had at least an approved budget, but now you might be refining it because something's just changed. Your grant dollars didn't get, or you got an extra grant. You know, we've got to look at all these capital grants that just come out in the state. Well, we've got to look at what we're going to do with that. And your committees are going to be hard at work doing it, and those reports got to flow back to the board so that we're all aware of what's going on. Again, you know, who's sitting at our board table? You know, when you know, is it time to replace some members of our board? You know, that's one of the things we have to think about, but it has to be done. Okay? The effective boards start as executive board members. You know, and I applaud every one of you for, you know, for coming here today to, you know, learn. You know, this is what it's all about, is this education. We have to learn from whatever source we have, and there are lots of them out there. Okay, are we recruiting competent people? And the biggest one is, how many keep track of their attendance at their board meetings? You need to, because what's your bylaws say about board attendance? Yeah, you know, you better know what the bylaws say, and you better be doing it. You know, we got site visits coming up from the Bureau. And I will tell you that that's one of the program expectations is, you know, up-to-date bylaws and board attendance. So you have to make sure that you're getting people that are committed to be at that board meeting every month, or at the committee meetings, whatever they are. We have to keep recruiting, and if somebody isn't doing their job, you know, it's up to, you know, the board chairs, you know, to, you know, meet with them and say, you know, what's the problem? You know, do we need to have you resign from the board? Because we can't conduct business if we don't have quorum, and if you're constantly missing, you're not getting the information. You know, we're lacking in what our principles are as a board by following our own documents. And again, once we get those pieces at that table, we get effective people sitting at the table, we're going to be effective as a board. Okay, there's 3 different pieces to that process. And Arizona State University come up with this. You know, you've got your recruitment. We've been talking about recruiting your boards. Yeah, it's real light. It was hard. The top one is a recruitment. So we're recruiting our board members. And then, what kind of training are we providing new board members? Or we have a board orientation that we're giving board members. You know, somebody comes on, they have a process. And then the continuing education. Your bylaw should have some type of board development process set up in there. How are we developing and training board members throughout the year? You know, you've taken a great step of coming here today. You know, look for opportunities. We're constantly getting emails from MPCA, Philip, Dana, Andrea, Tiff, on webinars. In fact, I mean, all our staff at the association state level, there's webinars, so we don't even have to leave our house. You can do it in your pajamas with a cup of coffee. NAC does the same thing. There's webinars available. There's documents that you can get. There's videotapes. There's, you know, all of it's there. There's, if you need something in a particular area, get a hold of the association. Let some staff come out to the health center. If you need, you know, certain areas, whatever it be, whether it be advocacy or any other line up there, we've got the staff to do it. We've got a great group of people that are there to help us. We have to maintain our education. Okay, and we have to be competent as board members. If we're not, it's time for us to go. Okay, so we have to put those three pieces together to be, you know, recruit the right people, give them proper training when they come on, and then evaluate what we're doing. So we want to make sure not only is the board functioning properly, but do we as board members evaluate our own work that we're doing on our boards. Becky?
David, in your work across the country, have you seen any member competency tools or the assessments that
there are board member self-evaluations. I don't know if I put any in the packet. I put some resources in there as far as that was for tomorrow, but I don't know if there was a individual. I can look at that and get that to Andrea, and then she can put it out on the listserv. If not, my contact information is at the end of the presentation. You just send me an email and I'll send that out to you. Because I've picked up a couple here and there, and some of them, I hate to date myself, go back underneath the 50 days, long before the Bureau of Primary Health Care. So we've got a lot of that resources out there that we can use. It's just a matter of knowing what you don't have and finding out who's got it. But I mean, that's the beauty, you know, we can, these evaluations. If there's none on the NAC website, you can go, because they've got all kinds of documentations, and there's a set of bulletins that you can get. They're all free to members. You just log into NAC and then download them underneath the publication. And I think there might be something there about a board self-evaluation or board evaluation or combination thereof. Do you have a question? Yep. So, I mean, we have to do this, yeah.
You can go to Board Source, or even in Michigan M&A, they have all kinds of board evaluation tools on their website too.
Yeah, some of those, and you can Google it and come up with a lot of stuff. Board Source sometimes, you know, they'll charge you for most stuff, but every now and then just hold on. What was the other one here in Michigan?
M&A, Michigan Nonprofit Association.
Okay. So there's some other resources available. Again, just Google, you know, nonprofit boards, and you'll get tons of stuff. Actually, that's how I found this little diagram here, which kind of fits into all these pieces that we're talking about, the effectiveness. So we work it all together to come up with this. Unfortunately, by the time it got processed over, it's hard to see the wording on it. Again, recruit, training, evaluate ourselves, use that. You have to do the board annually, why not do ourselves annually? You know, here's something we can look at and say, hey, am I doing a good job? Am I showing up? Am I following what we said we're going to do? And, you know, which makes me a competent board member. And so if we've got 15 competent board members, we should have a competent board of directors doing our job effectively and efficiently. Okay, and again, you know, this is so much of this stuff. Our members qualified. It boils down to our recruiting. You know, we talk a lot about it, but for the simple fact, if we're not recruiting good people, they're not going to make good decisions. And if we're not dedicated to and dependable to show up at a meeting, you know, we can't take action if you don't have a quorum. You know, you should be following Robert's rules or have quorum stipulated in your bylaws. You may want to do that. Review your own documents to make sure that you know. There's a board training one night at the board meeting. Take 15 minutes and we're going to review pages 1 through 10 of the bylaws to make sure everybody's on the same page. Is our board appropriate size? You know, there's a key factor to recruit. Okay? Smaller organizations, they might need just 9 board members. We're at 14, and we're looking for a couple more because we've grown so much. And you look at some of these other organizations, they might be, I haven't seen too many pushing 2025 mark, but there may be a need for it, depending on the complexity and the size of your organization. Make sure our size is appropriate for what we're doing in the size of our organization. You get into large numbers, sometimes we have difficulty getting them to the table or getting agreement. But again, effective, educated folks at the board table, appropriate number, and we will become effective. If not, that's a goal for the board. We want to board meetings. Currently we're running 2 hours. Let's get it down to an hour and a half this year. Let's streamline and see how we can get our board more effective, so we can trim 30 minutes off our board meeting. Don't do it all at one shot. Might be too much of a shock for the board members that are used to a long meeting. What kind of things that we're doing to get the board members here? How many provide meals at the board meetings? Okay, I'm ready to make a list because I'm coming to dinner. Coffee and cookies, I mean, but again, are we looking, is our board meetings held at a time that's convenient for our board members? Don't be afraid if you have to readjust your time in your board meetings to make sure that you can get your board members there.
How about, I might get in trouble if I ask this question.
Go for it.
How about, I don't want to get anybody riled up if I say compensation.
You can.
See, I know I better.
You can get reimbursed for travel expenses. You can pay mileage to and from. That's allowable underneath the federal grant. You cannot get a paycheck for doing it.
Oh, no, I don't mean in that manner, but some way. I've seen where we discuss in meetings and stuff, and I've seen board members who need help. I mean, really need help. And they come to board meetings and they help and they work, and we're talking about helping everybody and doing this and the jobs and all that. We got people sitting on the board that really need help. Now, I'm not talking about setting up something where you don't compensate the person who's volunteering that don't need it, but you actually have people, and they shouldn't be denied because they don't have the money coming in like other people. They shouldn't be denied to have leadership positions. But if we're making money and we have some money, we should find some way to help or to help compensate or to help those people who are on the board.
Transportation costs is the biggest thing. You got somebody that, in what we talk about user populations, we have to have people representative of our patient base. Well, you see, you've got people that are low income. They may not have car, but they're going to be an excellent board member. They're dedicated. They know their stuff.
Right.
You can pay cash fare in transportation costs. Actually, we've had a discussion when we're recruiting. Do we need to give them a gas card to pay for the gas ahead of time for each meeting?
Or daycare provider?
Daycare is, if you've got a single mom, excellent. That was my next point. Thanks, Becky. That you can pay daycare expenses for a board member to come to that meeting. You've got it. It's all allowable underneath the federal guidelines. So there's some things that you could get to encourage that, because, like you say, there's some excellent people out there. We just got to find a way to work within the guidelines. Sometimes we have to get creative, but you can do it if you really want. Telephone. How many in your bylaws say I can have phone meetings? Yeah, you need to have that, or electronic. Do you have capabilities? If you have satellite location, can they log into a web-based video conference? There's things that we can do that way to help cut down on transportation. We've got, if you got a large service area like a lot of us do, we might have to drive an hour. Up in the Northwest, it's 2.5 hour drive from one end of their service area to the other. In UP, it's all the way across the Upper Peninsula. So, you can do things with electronic means, but your bylaws have to say that you can do it. And again, that's why I say, know your bylaws, what's in them, know the program expectations. If you haven't taken a look at those two documents, do so. Because it's that knowledge that we have to have between our ears that allows us to be effective, because we know what we can and can't do. That help you out a little bit? But, if you got more questions, there's Becky is there, get a hold of the MPCA, or, if we don't know the answer myself, we will find it for you.
It might be through grants or something, specific grants that we could write, maybe with help donations to help to set up some parameters according to our bylaws, so we'll compensate people who really need it.
Well, you have to be careful when you talk compensation. There's reimbursement expenses which are allowed. You can't be reimbursed for leaving work so often. There's some really great areas, but make sure that what you do is allowed underneath the federal guidelines.
Right, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, there's some ways that you can do it. Like I said, the reimbursement. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, if the board member is also a client of your medical center, and they are a needy person, or somebody on your organization try to help them get the help that they needed.
Well, yeah, they're a patient.
So, specifically, they wouldn't be getting the help because they were a board member, they'd be getting it because they were coming / patient.
But underneath the guidelines, some of those, like reimbursement for mileage, is allowable expense. We do, our board, they sign off, every 3 months or whatever, or even sooner, depends on how the situation is. And most of us, we don't take it, or some of them take it back, donate it back to our nonprofit, our fundraising account.
I was just thinking that if they were that needy, they also might be a client, in which case we can try to make sure that we get
51% of our board have to be. So, there's the other key piece, is you have to be, we have to look at that board representation at 51% users. If we're not 51% users, I will say the Bureau will crack down quickly and firmly. And so, yes, sir.
One of the other things is continue to reinforce ownership on the part of board members of the community center. It's a community center, and they are owners. They are part owners. You need to reinforce that a lot in order for the board to be effective.
Right, yeah. It's just like anything else, you have to have ownership in the organization.
Right.
When you get involved, and the more you know, it's easy to really get sucked into the movement. I went to one meeting many moons ago, and I haven't left yet because I got into me at that meeting. Then I've been threatened with great bodily harm if I do. But yeah, you have to have ownership not only from the board but all the way through. Dr. Conn will tell you, if your providers aren't bought into what we're doing, they're not going to stick around long. And it's mission based. That's the key thing on everything we do. When you look at your providers, and any one of them could probably go out in the private sector and make more money. That's. Although we do pay, competitive wages, they have to be bought into the mission. Just like, we as board members, front desk people, the whole organization, top to bottom, if they're not bought into ownership, because we are a family business, and community based. So, that buy-in is so key when you do your strategic planning and your long-term plan. You have to have these folks at the table. We don't want our staff put together the strategic plan and say, oh, board, here it is. Well, no, we have to be involved because we have to make sure it's done. It's what we need from the community because we are the eyes and ears of the community to that board of directors. And it works both ways. Programs that we have in that we're providing, we need to let the community know what's going on so that we can recruit more patients, which builds our income, and it's just, the circle of life going around. Again, we talk about, proper training. How many have a board member orientation manual? There's some examples out there. If you have to put one together for new board members, what should be in there? Larry, what are a couple things you have in yours?
Oh, just general schedule, certainly the mission, of course, is at the very front. Committee assignments, what each committee does, when they meet. Expectations, there's what I call behavioral expectations. You know, you can't go bad mouthing the place. Or supportive kind of things. Who to report to when someone in the community asks you what's going on. What do you do with that? That's very important. You know, sometimes things happen and they ask the board member, you know, what can you do about this? You can't do anything about that. But you don't say that to the person. You refer to the person to the proper administration.
Yeah, I'll carry the message to the right people, and they'll follow through.
And then make sure you get back to them.
Susie, what about you?
Well, one thing that we do with our incoming new board members is they are placed on a committee first. They get the feel of how things go. They're able to come to the board meetings. Of course, they don't have a vote if they're just on a committee. But they go to the committee and vote. So technically, they're getting something to the board. And actually, we let them see if that's what they think they want to do. And we've had some that have, you know, come on, yeah, boy, I'm ready to help you. And after about 6 months, they say, I'm sorry, I just can't work this in anymore. You know, it's a great idea, but thanks, but no thanks. And so that's what we do before they're elevated to a full-time board member.
Which is a nice thing. You know, it's one of the few places I know that do that. That has that trial, basically their involvement as a volunteer at a committee level. But again, your bylaws have to allow for that. You have a question?
No, I was going to make a comment.
Okay.
Your question was, what should be in the packet?
Right.
And I was thinking history of the healthcare center, and then also services provided by the healthcare center. Because it's very important to know what the healthcare center is providing.
Yeah, they need to know, you know, where we came from, where we're at. Larry?
Dave, one of the things we had last year was a very simple kind of way of reading finance reports. A very simple outline of how you read a balance sheet, those kinds of things, which some people, you know, take a look at it, it doesn't make any sense to them. But we added, how do you do this? You know, and some very, very simple guidelines.
I like that. That's very good. Now, was it your center that did the picture directory?
Yep. Picture directory.
They used to, so when new members come on, to see who all was on it, they had just a snapshot of all the board members and what their background is. And this was in their orientation manual.
It's now out of date, but it's coming up again.
Yeah, but I mean, it's something like that, so that way they could put the face with the name, which was a very unique idea. I tried to do that, and I thought I was going to get hurt before I got out of board meetings. Nobody wanted their picture taken. Oh. But, I mean, stuff like that, you know, resumes, you know, who's on the board, they say, committee assignments, acronyms.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know, we use alphabet soup in this line of work. And unfortunately, most of our acronyms will coincide with something else in another industry. And we have to sit back and go, which item am I wearing today, and what does that mean? So there's a lot of things like that. We have to have that process in place, orientate these new members that we're bringing on.
Dave, we put a copy of the bylaws at each orientation.
Oh, absolutely. That's a must.
And also there's a board member agreement every member signs saying that they will attend their committee meetings and what's expected of them, so they sign it.
Ethics
And
policy.
also the HIPAA confidentiality stuff.
Conflict of interest statement.
Conflict of interest.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of these documents that we have to be aware of as we move through whatever we do from our personal life to our center life that we've got to be very careful of. So again, it's the education process, so they know that they're not in there to make a name for themselves. Unfortunately, we have people join organizations just because they want their name involved.
Dave, that becomes particularly critical if you have a pharmacy in conjunction with the center. Not only the conflict of interest, but is there any record of any kind of felony whatsoever? If you have pharmacy, they get very, very strict about that.
And again, it's knowing what the requirements are for what your operation is. Bureau says you will have a conflict of interest policy in your bylaw. And then underneath the new 990s, There's a question on the new 990s, has the board members signed a conflict of interest statement? So that's another one of those annual documents, like a confidentiality agreement that you have signed on an annual basis. So again, it's knowing what we have to do. It's like every other profession. You never stop learning because things change so much. What type of processes do we have going on at locations for education of our members? What are some of the things that you're doing to keep everybody on the board educated?
Presentations.
Okay.
Each board member taking the chance on a monthly basis to present a different topic, which affects the board and for ourselves.
Okay, does anybody have a monthly board training? At each meeting, have some type of training of some sort? Do you have to do that every month? I have to admit, I stole my idea from Patrick. Again, nothing, you know, I like to, use the case method, copy and steal everything. Another group, I should say, swipe and deploy it. But they use a consent agenda, and that's how I ended up doing it in our organization. But every month, they have a 30-minute board training. Your board meeting with a consent agenda might last 15 minutes, depending on what you have pulled out of the agenda. So every month, we have some type of presentation, whether it be from a board member, staff, or somebody from the community. We've had the economic development director come in and say, this is what's going on, this is what we're working for. Hospital folks come in, topics that are important to us as an organization, that we need to know what's happening in our surroundings. And so, use some type of education here, set up a regular program. Yes, sir?
Just an example, we've been getting on our board a written report that's in the packet, so that's nice to be able to review ahead of time from the director. But a question, you keep referring to committees. What are, in your experience, a good combination of committees, the kinds of committees?
Well, the program expectation says you'll have the personnel, finance, quality improvement, a planning committee, and then, of course, the executive committee. Those are the 5 required. And, you have to have the ability as an organization to call an ad hoc committee if needed. We have a fundraising committee, although not very active. But, you've got the key ones that the Bureau says you have to have. If you're looking at spending money, your finance committee should be reviewing your finance documents. And if the strong committee structure, so they're making reports out, they're doing their homework assigned, bringing it back to the board, so the board doesn't have to rehash all the decisions, what went into their recommendation. We put people on committees with the full knowledge that they're going to know what they have to do, and they're educated in the process. The board chairs charge these committees, and there's layouts in the bureaus and the program expectations of what these committees are supposed to do. So if you haven't, it's PIN 9823. If you haven't read it, get it, read it, keep it handy. I carry a copy of that and bylaws at every meeting because somebody says, I've got a 3-ring binder, I just carry everything in it. But when somebody says, well, what's this? Well, instead of going back and saying, well, I got to go look and pull the bylaws up, I've got it right here, I'm right in it, or the things. So that's just a way of keeping it handy. But, that's another thing in your board orientation manual, a copy of that program expectations. So they know what's in there. And if you want to get even technical on that, you get the Public Health Code, CFR 42, the authorization laws tells it what you can and can't do. Yes, ma'am.
What was it? I'm a new board member. What was the second item? You said bylaws and what that you carry every month?
The program expectations. And it's PIN 9823. They keep changing, but that's the program expectations. It's about 40 or 50 pages, but it tells all the things that we have to do as health centers laid out by the Bureau. And there's some strong verbiage in there about you will do this, or you must do this, or you should do this. But those are key pieces that we need to know as board members what we're expecting. Yes, sir.
I think think it's important, and talking about board training is a relationship with the federal government. They provide training, board training, and strategic planning also. Strategic planning. We're in the process of setting up where we would have the federal government come in with no cost.
Well, yeah, they've got technical assistance dollars.
Right.
And you just go through, your director would go through your project officer and request technical assistance training.
Right, and they'll come in and they'll do training 2 days or whatever it takes.
They set it up. I'm actually one of those people that do that for writing.
Right, so that's good. If you want to cultivate a good relationship, an open relationship with the federal people.
Well, your project officers, we just went through a change for a lot of us in Michigan. Have changed project officers to do some restructuring. But again, that's that relationship with that person. Your director should really have a constant open line of communication with the project officer.
Hey, I'm going to throw something else in there. I'm excited about our president and his wife and what she's doing. I think she came out of healthcare. I think staying in touch with the WhiteHouse.com and what the president and his wife is doing is key. And also Renee, is that her name? The one that's the head of the, not Health Human Services, that's key too. But Attorney General. She also came out of the clinic. What's her name?
You weren't talking about Mary Week, though. You were talking about someone else.
No. The Attorney General is a sister.
No, that's about Eric Holder. That's Holder. Eric Holder.
No, he's Attorney General. I'm talking about health, and the health.
Oh, the Surgeon General. Okay.
Right.
Too many generals.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, not enough of us people down there doing the front.
Yes, too many chiefs and Indians.
In terms of board information, I think those are key areas to stay in touch with for board members.
Well, you've got the resource. The Bureau has their website that you can go on and get information from. MAC has information on their website.
Yeah.
And also, the Primary Care Association has links and resources. Spend time on it because there's a lot of information that you can pull off. And don't be afraid to ask for help. If you need some, you're looking for some training in an area, call the association. Hey, who can I get for this training? You've got people surrounding your center in different areas that are more than happy to come out and sit down and educate you on some of the things. Again, the finance, Larry talked about having how to read a balance sheet. That's pretty important to a new board member, even a seasoned board member. And especially when you go, if you went through a JCO certification or any of these certifications that we've got to come under now, they're going to want to ask you about what do you look for on your financial reports. I still go back to the story we had on our first JCO review. One of our board members, she was a retired school bus driver. She was one of our founding members. She's late 70s. The reviewer asked me, says, when you get your board packet, what's the first thing you look at? She says, I look at the bottom line. He says, well, where do you find it? She says, second page, bottom right-hand corner. That was the end of that discussion. But again, it's the education. So, the finances and all this is all ties in because we have to budget for that. When you start approving your budgets, do you have a board development line item? And are we using it? It's nice to have it there, but you have to allow for some training expense, meetings like this, the annual meeting coming up in August, the NAC meetings. The educational opportunities are out there. And so, did you have a comment?
When you're done.
Okay. So don't be afraid to use them. Now, underneath, if you have somebody go to the NAC meetings, even if it's one person, they can get their password and share it with everybody on the board. So they can go in and look at the videotape. Well, I'm dating myself here. It's all web-based now that you can go in and review these sessions and even print off the documents. Used to be we had to buy cassette tapes, then we had to buy CDs, and now it's all web-based. So if you've got somebody from your organization, I know budgets are tight. You might only send the director or or the board chair or whoever, medical director, but have them share that password so everybody can get this information.
I was just going to share that you referenced in 9823, and the Bureau's done a couple of things. That's a really hard document to get through. To make it a little easier, so you can find on the Bureau's website or our website and MAC's websites 2 documents that are good supplements, I guess, or new revised versions.
19 pieces.
Yeah, there's this new thing called the 19 program requirements. It's more of a summary overview. And then a more lengthy document called the operational assessment or site visit.
Yes,
Guide.
2000 something or other.
They're both, I think they call it this, I think it's called the site visit guide now. And those all that one walks you through, again, the 19 program requirements in a little bit more depth and has a lot of pieces about what the core components of board should be looking at. So.
Yeah, those are a couple of short documents, but when it gets into detail, go back to that thing. Because it's a summary. And that when the Bureau's doing site visits now, you better be in order with all these things. And so keep looking at that. Make sure the board is knowledgeable about all the things that you're doing. Okay. We talked about the board evaluation. Okay, we do the evaluation. What do we do with it? Now, there's a board training piece right there. You just did your board evaluation. I got these results right here. Now, what am I going to do? I turn around, and that's a board training in 1 month. So when I get those back, I put them into a PowerPoint, and I walk through them with the board. So this is how we're rating ourselves, right? We mark ourselves down in this area. What are we going to do? And then we set our goals for the next year, how we're going to improve ourselves as a board. We do the self-evaluation. You know, we don't really go over those, but make sure you got those to process and bring it up. Some of the good characteristics of effective board members, you know, responsible, you know, be energized about this. We need to make sure that we're approaching everything in a responsible manner. We need to be loyal to our organization. And we are you get duty of care, loyalty, and I'm drawing a blank on the third one, but that loyalty, the decisions we make affect the center. We don't want to make a decision that's going to affect us personally in our private life. You know, we want to make sure we're loyal to the organization. Welcoming the information that somebody brings to the table. Again, you know, around this table, we've got backgrounds so diverse. It's what makes it strong. And you know, if we're saying we're going to do something, let's honor our commitment. Make sure that, you know, I'm going to go research this and I'll report back. Make sure you do that. And again, we support those decisions. We walk out of that meeting, even if we're the lone dissenting vote, we're going to support the majority on any decision, and we're going to, you know, promote that. You know, honest, you know, be courteous to your board members. You know, give your honest opinion, but do it constructively. You know, if you think somebody's way off base, do it politely before you tell them they're nuts. That conflict of interest. Know that line. Not only a true conflict, but the appearance of is just as important. So even though there may be no conflict, but somebody could interpret it, well, now that you're doing something that's, you know, wrong. Well, you're not, but it just looks like it. One piece I will say that people have, you know, made the statement, you know, over the years in my involvement is your executive director and your board chair need to be like this. I've seen it where they've accused the two people being in cahoots together, but those two pieces are intertwined because the board chair is the sounding board for that executive director. They need to be working closely together because they need to bounce ideas off. Well, yeah, the chair says, well, you know, it's a great idea, but we need to take this back to the full board, and so we need to make sure that everything gets through. So it may look like they're trying to do something on their own, but they're not. 99.999% of the time. There's always a possibility. But, so it looks like there might be something going on. Just know that those two positions are very intertwined. Okay. Make sure we know our legal and fiduciary responsibilities. You know. Again, it's knowledge of what we're supposed to do. You know, knowing that the buck stops with the board. As my folks like to tell me, if we go under, you're going to jail. But I mean, it's one of those things, we have to know that we're responsible for that organization. If something goes wrong, the feds aren't coming to the executive directors. They're coming to the board meeting. And if you can't explain yourself and have document why you did things that certain way based on this, you know, you're going to be in more trouble. We want to focus on the issues at hand, not the personality of the person bringing them forward. You know, that constructive criticism and feedback. Ask informed questions. You know, I love the dialogue we've had today. We've got a lot of good questions coming back. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, the only bad question is one that's not asked. Because until you ask a question, you don't know. And if you got that same question, maybe somebody else does too, and nobody wants to bring it forward. You know your responsibilities, you know, the legal and everything else. We talked about a board member agreement. Know what that says. What are we supposed to do as a board member? And make sure we serve on at least one committee. I know sometimes it's hard depending on work schedule and stuff, but again, there's no set time committees have to meet. But every board member should be on at least one committee. Unless you tick off the chair, then you're on every committee. But come to those, you know, show up to meetings on time. You know, read your material. Make sure you know what you're going to be covering that day. And participate in discussion. You know, I can't emphasize all this stuff, because all this stuff is going to make us a better board member, which is going to make us a better board. Okay? You know, be committed to our mission. You know, like I said, we've talked about that over and over again. Spread that mission to the community. That's our job. One voice representing the organization. We're all going to give the same message. And then when it comes to, you know, in the community, if you say, you know, attend a meeting, you know, as representative of the center, you have no ability to make decisions. You know, we can't speak for the whole board unless we're given that duty by the board itself. So know your limitations. You can take it back for review from the board. Be careful what we do when we're representing the organization in the community meetings or whatever. And then act as an advocate for the organization and our members. And we'll touch a few more minutes about advocacy. That's kind of one of these things that's near and dear to my heart. Don't be afraid to admit you need help. We've got consultants out there from soup to nuts. You know, if you need help doing salary surveys, there's consultants that'll do that. Strategic planning, there's consultants that'll do that. Sometimes we have them in the house, sometimes we've got agreements with them for members of the association. But don't be afraid to ask for help. If it may just be calling up a fellow board member, say, hey, can you explain this a little bit more to me? If you got a question on the finance, call your treasurer, call the director. Hey, you know, can I sit down with the CFO and have him explain this to me? You know, go through the director and have him, that way they're aware that you're meeting with staff, because our only employee is that director. And we need to go through them. They need to be aware of what we're doing. So we really don't have the authority to walk up and ask somebody on staff to do something for us. It has to go through the director. They might tell you to go ahead and contact them yourself, but they're aware that you're going to be meeting to go over this issue. And then contribute, you know, knowledge. Don't be afraid to say, hey, you know, I got this, I'd like to share it with the board. You know, take a couple minutes of the meeting or after a meeting or whatever. Share what you know. You know, all the stuff that I talk about here, I've learned over the last 25 years. You know, it's, like I say, once you get involved in this, this gets in your blood and you're just not going anyplace. But be willing to give a little time. You know, we all give time for the board meetings, committees. Don't be afraid to jump in a little bit extra. Right now, you know, I took out a job working with some of our staff. They asked me to be involved with health center activities and voter registration. So I'm digging in there because I don't go to work anymore. You know, we have limited time and energy as board members because we have an outside life. But, you know, make sure that we're giving appropriate what we can do. And as we talked about earlier, you know, Sue says, you know, this board members come, I just can't do it anymore. Or, you know, they just don't show up. We need to take a look at those actions and be active, you know, at the committee level and across the organization. Advocacy. You know, I think we'll go back and touch on that. It wouldn't be a presentation for me if we didn't have advocacy in it. how do I advocate? You know, we can advocate, we can lobby, we just can't use federal grant dollars to do it. But we have to advocate on all levels, among ourselves, in the community, the state, and national level. How many are on the registry for the healthcare defenders of this Primary Care Association and that become a healthcare defender? Oh, I don't like these numbers. Philip, you got the computer up so we can sign them up while they're here.
What are you talking about? Is that
Ask
the
again,
email?
Dave.
Okay, underneath the Primary Care Association and that, you can become a healthcare defender where you get the weekly updates and the call to action.
That's on email.
On an email, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't get it, Philip will sign you up. This is a key piece. And, you know, we talk about education. There's so much come out, and all this work that brought us to where we are today in the history, as Philip went over, didn't get there by accident. You know, we talked about Ted Kennedy being one of the biggest advocates of this movement. He didn't get there just because he wanted. He had people from grassroots level, at our level, going in and talking to him, saying, this is what Jack Geiger went in and sat in his office and would not leave until he had Ted's ear for a few minutes. Sat there all day long. They said, well, maybe you might want to come back. And he said, no, I'll wait. And he sat in that office until he got a face-to-face with Senator Kennedy. I mean, but this is the advocacy role that we play. And so we have to do that. Our funding levels are too important not to be the voice of our organization in there. And again, we get the money, it allows us to do things that's going to be effective for the community. You know, maintain those relationships with your elected officials. You know, Tip O'Neill says all politics are local. We're getting in election cycle, and we're starting to get into primary season pretty heavy now. The filing dates, 11 days away. We're going to have an idea of who the candidates are. Start talking to them. Regardless of what their political affiliation is, start talking to them about what we do. You know, advocacy is a strong piece, and it's one of the job descriptions that we have, and it's dictated down by the feds. We got, if you're not comfortable doing it, we've got people here that will help. Get to know their staff. Because chances are, you'll talk to the staff more than you will the official. And then, who's the last person to talk to the elected official before they cast a vote? It's the staff member walk alongside to the session. Go to town meetings when they're held by the legislators or whatever organization, you know. Get to know, I'm from Family Medical Center, you know, this is what we do. We take care of everybody regardless of their ability to pay for quality preventative services. Know these things. You know the key points about the health centers. Don't be afraid to write a letter, send an email, or a fax. There's templates when these call to actions come out to say, these are the key talking points. And if you need help, get a hold of the association, myself, or someone else on your board, you know. It might be good, if not, we've got people that we can help close to you. Offer to testify about what's going on. Doug Patterson will be right there with you. He'll help you. Write your testimony. And it's an interesting piece if you've never done it. But you know, your legislators get to know you. They know what you stand for. They may call you and say, hey, we want you to testify at this hearing about your health center, what it means to your community. Write letters to the editor. Write an op-ed. You might want, you got to be non-committal, but you could dictate the facts. You know, we serve 20% of the Medicaid population with only 2% or 2% of the dollars. You know, we're saving the healthcare system money by the state's own numbers. This is the numbers. Know those. Michigan, we got 33 organizations with over 180 delivery sites. We are taking care of the people in this state. You know, what's your percentage of sliding fee? You know, these are the uninsured populations that come to our center. We get a grant that helps take care of our fundings. But last year we used 140% of that grant to provide uncompensated care. Know those numbers about your center. You know, that tells these people that everything that you're talking about, it can be backed up. It's right in your financial statements. You know, here's our percent of Medicaid, here's our sliding fee. Have an idea what those are. So when you go out and talk to these people, you can speak with facts and with authority. Be active. Primary Care Association, we have a legislative forum. We got the annual meeting coming up. It's education and it's networking. You know, you're going to get a lot of this stuff where you can meet folks from around the state that are doing it. Same thing you're doing. And the old adage in this line, in the movement, when you see one health center, you see one health center. We all have the same mission, but we may go about it a different way. And we can learn from one another and how to be more effective in everything we do as a board. Like I say, know what's in the expectations. And if you go on the NAC's website, nachc.com, underneath the advocacy tab, there's a link in there that tells you what you cannot and can do when it comes to advocacy and things like that. You know, one of the things, we have a duty to the patients to make sure that we have a viable organization. And we're spending the money wisely. We're entrusted with tax dollars. And so we need to know that we're doing the best job we can with the best amount of money. And if we don't become the voice of our patients, who's going to do it? We're patients. We're health center board members. We've got a minimum of 51% of our board. We're patients. We're speaking from the heart. You know, God bless our directors and our providers when they go advocate it at the state and national level. They do a fantastic job. But they're looked at, well, you're trying to save your job. We don't get paid. We're there because we want to. And you know, when you look at the longevity in this room, we got to be doing something right to keep these people, you know, keep all of us in here as long as we have to. So it comes from the heart. So we are that voice. But we also talk to the community members about how good we are as an organization, what we're doing. We're adding a new service. Let's promote the living daylights out of it, because if we don't, who's going to? And lastly, my contact information, if you have any questions or need some direction on where to find something, some support documents, if you can't find them, shoot me an email. I'll get the documents. It may take me a day or two to get them out to you, but I will get them. And no, that's not correct. That's not. Any questions? Philip?
Can I add a characteristic?
No.
Just a quick fun fact for you. Less than 10% of nonprofit board members in the country are under 30. And the majority of them are over 65. And I think it really brings up an important characteristic of a board is that it be multi-generational. So multi-generational boards help build competency within the board over a long term. If you don't have younger members on your board, then when your older members, retire from being on the board, or they're not capable of doing that anymore, you really have nobody to fill in the shoes. It's the same concept of a retention plan or a succession plan in a business where you're setting people up to succeed and grow within an organization. You really need to be doing the same thing with your boards. And I think if we looked around the room, we'd see that that statistic holds true in the health center movement, and it really is an area that we have to focus and recruit towards, is having folks of different generations with different skill sets in our boards.
Well, and that boils down to, what's our patient mix? Your board as a group needs to represent your patient population as a group. So if you've got a large chunk of under 30, we don't want everybody, 55 and older making decisions for that age group, because they have a different need than we do in our age group. So,
and you do. So about a third of health center patients are under 19, and the group that's 65 and older statewide is only about 40,000 out of our 600,000 patients. So the majority of our health center patients are below 65, and a huge majority of them are below 19. So.
And I believe that's on your website, right? Correct?
Yeah, just looking at UDS, so I did make sure I gave you the right numbers.
So again, there's resources out there. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Or if you, like I say, if you got some information, you're weak in an area, we're here to help. The association, myself, and many other folks around the state, and we've been, some of them say, you see earlier, we've been in it a couple days. We're willing to share our information. That's why we're involved in this movement. So, you know, just dig in when you run into it, ask. Larry.
About 4 years, maybe 5 years ago, I was reminded of the importance of contacting our legislators and senators. I had put 5 phone calls into Carl Levin's office on the same day. I said I wanted to talk to him. My phone rang about 4:30 in the afternoon. He said, "This is Carl Levin, Larry. What do you want?" I told him what it was. Very important. Keep on bugging, they'll respond.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Himself. Carl said, "Larry, what do you want?"
And it is. It's the advocacy can't be understated. You know, without that, we wouldn't be in the position we're at.
But Tip O'Neill said something else at one point. In his second election, he was quoted as saying he was starting, and he won his first election, and he was talking to his back neighbor, and he realized his back neighbor didn't vote for him. And he was astonished. He'd been family friends all his life, and he said, "Well, why didn't you vote for me?" You never asked me.
Yeah.
So let us not be hesitant to ask.
Absolutely. You know, and the NAC does advocacy training. If you ever went to the Policy Initiatives Forum in March in Washington, just 1 second, and they do, you know, show you, you know, they have role playing on there. It gives you an idea of the best way to do this. And those folks, are, you know, they do it day and night. Most of these people on our NAC federal advocacy team came off the Hill. You know, they were the ones working in the legislator's office. They'll tell you straight up front. Yes, sir.
This is going back to what Phil said. I think it's important when he pointed out about the age and the patients that we see. I just want to be on record that I'm aggressively supporting the idea that we get college students on the board. I'm impressed with some college students in our area that do a lot of volunteer work. They get the other groups from the college to come over, and I just see how that can be important to get a college person while they're in school to work in that capacity too, because they build other skills too, community skills and involvement. So I do want to be on record saying that I support getting a college student to participate, because there are some who want to volunteer.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of people.
A lot of nonprofit boards will have members of the community on the board who are connected for fundraising purposes, either on foundations themselves or, wealthy, or is that something you see health centers doing frequently?
Oh yeah, if you've got an opening, you know, and that's a skill set we all need. I don't know too many boards out there that are fluent in fundraising. But if we can recruit somebody, because those people are dedicated for the community, you know, or to a cause. And, you know, they're community-minded people. Yeah, I think that if you can recruit one that's interested in our cause, is willing to put in the effort for the health center, I think that is a win-win. Anything else? Questions? I just want to say thank you. Appreciate everybody coming. I hope I didn't bore you to death. But,
Great, thank you so much, Dave. It's always a pleasure to have you. I think this gives you all hopefully a good basis to better understand the history of the health center movement, more about the fundamental requirements of being on a board.